Why do some expensive movies look cheap?
Surprised to see me?
And some cheap movies look expensive? The answer lies in production value, a commonly used but often misunderstood term used throughout the film industry.
I'm just sick of all the amateur stuff, you know? I mean, like, if I'm paying top dollar, I want a little production value.
Showmanship.
Production value!
How can you raise the production value of your film without raising the budget? This is what is production value? Production value refers to the perceived technical quality of a film. In other words, it's the level of professionalism in a movie's visuals and sound. Production value is often confused with how expensive a film is. And yes, a movie with a sizable budget typically has a better chance at having a high production value.
Amaze.
But a film doesn't need expensive cameras, celebrities, giant sets and huge crews to feel cinematic. With careful attention to cinematography, production design, sound and post-production, a film with a small price tag can feel as professional as a film with twice its budget. Production value is far from everything, but it can signal to an audience that they are in the hands of a capable filmmaker and subliminally creates a level of trust for them to get fully on board with the story.
You want to know how it works?
We're going to look at some ways a filmmaker can achieve high production value without breaking the bank, starting with cinematography. The first path to expensive-looking cinematography is using a camera that can capture a high-quality image. Today, pristine 4K visuals can be achieved with cameras that are much more affordable than they were just 10 years ago. Prosumer cameras like the Sony FX3 or the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema can get great images for a low price tag. And remember, you don't need to buy a camera to shoot a film. You just need access to one for a contained period of time. Rent your camera, or better yet, find a friend you can borrow equipment from. John Waters had his own unique strategy for Pink Flamingos.
That was the kind of camera they used to make the news. And so I paid this guy that paid cameramen from the TV stations to illegally take the cameras out on weekend and bring it to me.
What is option B?
Build relationships with rental houses who often will be willing to cut you a deal according to your budget. Another crucial element of high production value cinematography is lighting. Bad lighting is one of the fastest ways to tank a film's perceived professionalism. Conventional film lights can be expensive, so get creative. The most powerful light on Earth is completely free, so plan your shoot around the sun. During location scouts, see what time the natural light is most pleasing and plan to shoot then. This also has to do with camera choice. On The Creator, director Gareth Edwards and DPs Greg Fraser and Oren Soffer shot on Sony FX3s, largely due to their low light capabilities. Soffer explains, "It allowed us to really embrace natural and available light in the various real-world locations we shot a vast majority of the movie in, without requiring us to heavily light locations and sets with big movie lights, while also leaning into the hyper-naturalistic lighting aesthetic we set out to achieve with the film." A low-budget shoot's best friend is ambient lighting, which refers to lighting that is already on location, such as a street light or a neon sign. Carefully utilizing these free light sources can result in stunning images that look much more expensive than they are. You can shape these light sources with cheap equipment like flags and bounce boards. If you're using the film lights, abide by the adage that less is more. Overlighting is a common example of low production value.
Welcome to the land of the living.
It's good to be back.
The good news is that stylish, contrasty lighting typically requires fewer lights, so it both looks better and is less expensive. And you can be thrifty. Find lights in unexpected places, like Leslie Harris did on Just Another Girl on the IRT.
My DP had his eye to the eyepiece and he looked up, he said, "Leslie, it's pitch black, I can't see a thing." And I was like, oh no, what are we gonna do? This was a really important scene. And the commercial next to us, they turned their HMI huge light over to our production. And that's how we got that shot off the ground.
Camera movement is another consideration. Smooth camera movements like dollies or cranes feel very expensive, and if you can find a way to do them cheaply, like by putting a tripod on rollers, they can increase your production value. But remember, a poorly executed dolly or crane will have the opposite effect. So instead of trying to fake it with a cheap gimbal that would likely look cheap, try leaning into a handheld aesthetic, which can feel like a creative choice rather than a cost-cutting decision. Christopher Nolan took this route on following.
If we do it predominantly handheld camera, so we're not trying to ape larger movie-making techniques with the dolly and so forth, and things that actually require very expensive equipment.
Of course, what's in front of the camera is just as important when it comes to production value. Let's look at production design. The quickest way to expensive-looking mise-en-scène? Shoot on location. Building sets is an expensive process. If you play your cards right, shooting on location can be free. Of course, shooting on certain locations can be expensive. An indie movie isn't going to shut down Times Square for a shoot anytime soon. But as a filmmaker, think about locations you have access to that others don't. Do you have a day job? Does your place of work look interesting? Shoot there. Do the same with friends and family. Think about who has access to eye-popping locations and see if they can pull strings for you. Of course, just because you have access to a place doesn't mean it will look good. We've all seen those short films that were clearly shot in the filmmaker's apartment. Push yourself outside of your comfort zone. A great location can do a lot of work for you. Another way to increase production value is through cheap atmospherics like hazers or smoke machines. These can add texture and character to your shot. And as with all production design, attention to detail is paramount. Costumes shouldn't look fresh off the rack. They should be lived in and reveal character history. The same goes for props. Don't just bulk buy on Amazon. Go to antique shops, vintage stores, estate sales. These places will have pieces that contain much more character, depth, and realism. If you're Peter Jackson and you need realistic gore, you could also go to a butcher shop.
Well, the brains and the meat and that sort of stuff is real. It's from the butcher's shop. I used to go there on a Friday, and I used to go in the supermarket and look up and down all the little trays of meat and try and spot the ones that looked the worst.
We've talked about visuals, but that's just one half of the story. Arguably the most common tell a movie was made cheaply is in its sound. Beginner filmmakers often will spend all their time focused on visuals, only to find out after the fact that their sound is lacking. Sound is one half of the movie experience, and audiences will often be more forgiving with visual imperfections than mistakes in audio.
Here is the menu.
Thank you.
I'll be right back with you.
So the first piece of advice, don't cheap out on the sound guy. Money that goes towards capturing good sound on set is money well spent. We've all been tempted just to have a friend hold the boom pole. But capturing sound is a skill and should be treated as such. Aside from capturing clean dialogue, a production sound mixer should also be given the time to record wild sound, which refers to audio recorded before or after a take, such as a specific sound effect or line that may be lost. This small step can be a lifesaver in post-production. Post-production is the last line of defense against anything that may lower production value. If a shot looks cheap, editing can provide the solution. Cut it and find a better shot. It's free to cut, so be your own harshest critic and cut things out that fall beneath your production value standard. You can also add shots to increase production value. High-quality stock footage sites can provide you with impressive establishing shots that can help you sell a certain location. And of course, post isn't just editing. Eye-catching VFX can quickly heighten a film's production value. But be very careful. Bad VFX can just as quickly tank your film's production value. Only depend on VFX if you know you can pull it off, which means lots of planning. VFX supervisor Andrew Whitehurst explains how he pulled off the relatively inexpensive effects on Ex Machina.
We started way before principal photography. We worked right the way through the shoot, and then we had 9 months of post afterwards. So I was on the film for probably about a year and a half. So it was a long haul, but it was a good haul.
Colour is also vitally important. You may have captured beautiful visuals on set, but if they're coloured by an amateur, it may all be for naught. If you can't afford a colourist who knows what they're doing, it could be a good idea to go black and white, which creates a look that is much more forgiving while also feels deliberate. The same goes for sound design. Here, it's all about attention to detail. Add high-quality, layered ambiences to each scene. Record Foley for sound effects that weren't recorded on set, and utilise free sound banks for anything you can't capture. On Primer, for example, Shane Carruth combined the sound of a mechanical grinder with a car engine to create the unforgettable hum of the time machine, an effect which was free to make but adds a lot of production value.
I'm turning it off. Wait. No, it's not my camera. I'm not buying it.
Then get a sound mixer. A movie with a poor mix will sound cheap. The process is a science, so bring in someone with expertise. Making a movie cheaply and still achieving a high production value is a great accomplishment. But it's important to remember that it's not everything. As we all know, there are expensive-looking movies that are very bad, and cheap-looking movies that are very good. Regardless of production value, story and a unique perspective will always matter most. Ready to get started? Hop on StudioBinder's storyboard and shot list softwares to plan your next film. Until next time, stretch that dollar.